Reminiscence was the latest big-screen sci-fi thriller that everyone watched off of HBO Max. The latest of WB's streaming hits, which also appeared in cinemas, I guess, was an interesting film about how everyone wants to live in the past. A very appropriate theme for nowadays. Like the story of the film, there's a lot more to see beneath the surface of this Christopher Nolan-esque film noir project, so much like one of those aforementioned projects, we need to go deeper.
I don't guess this means much to you.
Hell yeah, I could tell you some stories.
It should be no surprise that HBO became the home of Reminiscence. The writer and director of the project is none other than Lisa Joy, the co-creator of the HBO hit Westworld. Also known for her work on shows like Burn Notice, the creator has long been interested in directing her own film. This was Joy's passion project that she pursued while pregnant. She was so worried about chasing the project under her own name that she nearly used a male pseudonym instead. Luckily, her Westworld clout was more than enough to get the project off the ground and into theaters, and streaming services around the world. It's strange, but the story behind the inspiration of Reminiscence is almost more interesting than the film itself. Lisa Joy's home long had a mysterious plaque that her father put up with the name Suki Lynn written on it. She inquired about its meaning several times but never got a clear answer. Then one day after his passing, she discovered a faded photograph with the name Suki Lynn written on it. This was when she realized the importance of memory. It saddened her that the story behind Suki Lynn was lost forever because those memories were gone. She then vowed to write a movie about memory, which eventually became Reminiscence. Anyone who's watched Westworld knows that the series appreciates practical effects as much as it does CGI. Everything on the island from the first two seasons feels real and tangible, which clearly helped the cast connect to the fantastical environment, which in turn led fans to get more immersed in the series. Well, that philosophy continued in Reminiscence. Hugh Jackman revealed that a good deal of the Reminiscence machine was created for the actors and not CGI as it seemed. This was important for Lisa Joy because she wanted the actors to have appropriate reactions to the technology to make it seem more real. Hugh Jackman was perfect for his leading role in Reminiscence. Apparently, he was the only one considered by Lisa Joy for the role. She even pitched the project to Jackman personally, and he accepted. It's not hard to see why she wanted him for the role. The film, with its narration and focus on memory, bears a lot in common with The Prestige, another one of Jackman's leading roles. His perfect performance in that film was almost certainly more of an inspiration for this one than his decade of being the Wolverine. For years, the actress known as Thandiwe Newton was one of Hollywood's most overlooked talents. Despite high-profile performances in films like Mission Impossible 2, Crash, Rock'n'Rolla, and W, she was never able to break through the sea of other actresses. Then came Westworld, perhaps the first project to truly utilize Newton for the powerhouse of a performer that she truly was. This clout allowed her to rectify one of the greatest errors of her career, the misspelling of her name. Earlier in her career, Thandiwe Newton was used as her name instead of Thandiwe. She thought it would be better to make her fit in, but anyone who knows the older Newton knows that fitting in is no longer one of her goals. Thandiwe Newton has no interest in being like everyone else, and nor should she. Rebecca Ferguson has proven herself to be one of Hollywood's greatest assets. The Dr. Sleep, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and soon-to-be Dune star has stolen scenes from actors ranging from Tom Cruise to Ewan McGregor. One thing that she wasn't able to do before Reminiscence was to sing on screen. This might confuse people who watched The Greatest Showman. While her character sang in the film, it wasn't actually her voice used. Reminiscence cleared this up by actually allowing her to show off her abilities in a throwback speakeasy. Many people may not have recognized the villain from the New Orleans segment of the movie, but fans of the TV series Into the Badlands immediately pointed to the screen, recognizing that St. Joe was none other than Sonny from the AMC series, played by Daniel Wu. Apparently, he and director Lisa Joy got along famously while filming. Wu said he was overjoyed to work with a female Chinese director for the first time in his life. He even taught Joy several curse words that she hopes to find a use for in the future. Surely there's some room for Sonny in the next season of Westworld, right? What most people don't realize about movies is that there's a secret showdown that goes on behind the scenes before our favorite films hit the big screen. That is the release dates that are hotly contested. No one wants their film to compete against something like a Marvel movie, and that was a big problem for Reminiscence when the original date was bumped for the latest Mortal Kombat movie to take its spot. Then, Reminiscence had to be moved up several weeks due to its second release date conflicting with another kung fu film. This one, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, was an even more brutal competitor. The film's most notable characteristic is how the city of Miami is flooded. While this at first seems like a grim warning about a possible future for the famous city, it has a deeper meaning for the film itself. All of the characters are focused on the past, but none of them are looking ahead at the future. The rising water level of Reminiscence is there to remind the characters that no matter where you're looking, the future catches up with you. Can't really blame them for wanting to live in their fantasies when every day is a literal walk through a water park. Speaking of, the film really commits to its setting. My guess is that the most complicated part of shooting didn't have anything to do with those awesome action sequences or any of the performances. It was probably dealing with all that water. Well, the designers went above and beyond to make sure that the costumes weren't just functional for filming, but appropriate for the characters in the story. If you look close enough, you'll see that many of the characters are wearing rubber boots, since they spend most of their time walking through the water. Only problem with this is that you just know that Nike would have created much cooler boots if everyone in Miami had to trudge through water every single day. At first, it seemed a little unrealistic just how much Miami was submerged in water. I mean, were there no options to keep the water from completely and utterly overtaking the entire city? Well, apparently there were options. It's just that none of them worked. If you look closely at the establishing shots, you'll see an overwhelmed dam stands worthlessly against the oncoming ocean. Seems as if the city of Miami did try to defend itself against the water, but utterly failed. I mean, I guess it's something that they tried at least? That being said, it does seem as though some of the most interesting parts of the story were really found in the background. It'd be pretty cool to see a movie that explores the transitional period where Miami fought against and then slowly surrendered to the rising tides moving through its streets. Though, granted, that plot doesn't scream film noir so much as it does Roland Emmerich disaster movie. And somehow it's probably still going to be better than The Day After Tomorrow and 2012. Now, not everything about future Miami was completely depressing. While the design of the city was mostly meant as a grim prediction of the future, like the smoke-covered world of Blade Runner, some aspects of it were strangely beautiful. The design was somewhat inspired by the city of Venice, which is famous for its waterways through the city. Future Miami was full of gondola-style boats that ferried passengers across the city and water taxis. I mean, I don't see a single reason why no one thought to make a horse-drawn carriage using dolphins. I mean, that's a multi-million-dollar business idea right there. A lot of thought went into the creation of the future in Reminiscence. The conflicts over borders, rising sea levels, and intense nostalgia are all taken directly out of headlines of the present. That's why it's so surprising that the city of New Orleans was used so inaccurately. It's not hard to figure out that if Miami was partially flooded with water, that New Orleans, which is much lower beneath sea level, would be just as flooded, if not more so. The rising ocean isn't the only thing about the future in Reminiscence that gets focus. The film also highlights how blaring the sun is all the time. It's so brutal that the city of Miami is nocturnal. So in the sequences inside during the day, you'll notice that the sunlight is incredibly bold coming in through the windows. The only thing that's weird about this is that literally everyone in the movie dresses like it's Chicago in the fall. I mean, Jackman wears a heavy coat for most of the film, which would be horrible in Miami in the summertime today. On the other hand, I guess solving memory-based mysteries in swim trunks and flip-flops doesn't quite give you that proper Humphrey Bogart thing he was clearly going for. Not to mention at that point, you're basically channeling the 2017 reboot of Baywatch with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Zac Efron, and as entertaining as that was, it wouldn't really fit the tone of this story at all. In fact, let's never make that movie, please. I love Dwayne Johnson, love Zac Efron, love the idea of both of them in a movie with Hugh Jackman. Do not want it to be something like this. While Rebecca Ferguson was pretty great in Reminiscence, her best performance to date is as the absolutely horrifying Rose the Hat in the sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Dr. Sleep. If you thought that Ferguson played a sketchy character in Reminiscence, that is nothing compared to Rose. Well, this film featured a small and likely accidental reference to the Stephen King adaptation. Cliff Curtis, who played Cyrus Booth in the film, also appeared in Dr. Sleep as Billy Freeman. Kinda wondering if Lisa Joy was just as big a fan of Dr. Sleep. The screenplay for Reminiscence was apparently quite the big deal. Sometimes when there's a really hot script out there, studios will throw big money around trying to compete with one another for it in a bidding war. Well, that's exactly what happened with Lisa Joy's screenplay for Reminiscence. The script apparently was eventually taken for 7 figures, and is there a better compliment for a screenwriter than that? I mean, probably an Oscar, but the chances of a sci-fi film ever getting one of those is pretty slim. Being real with y'all, I'd probably just take the money and call it good there. Still looking forward to the day where the Academy finally gets their heads out of the dirt and puts some respect on the hallowed name of the sci-fi genre. Reminiscence obviously had its sights set on making a modern-day film noir like the classics you might see in the old black and white days. Movies like Chinatown, The Big Sleep, and The Maltese Falcon. Probably the movie's biggest point of reference was the Humphrey Bogart classic Casablanca. That movie's main character was obsessed with the memory of a lost love that he revisited over and over again by having his friend Sam play a song that reminded him of her. Basically, this movie was just Play It Again, Sam, with more complex technology. It's very surprising that Lisa Joy was able to become such a successful screenwriter given her upbringing. In Joy's household, they never even watched movies. In fact, she confessed that she'd never seen a movie until she was in college. She then became obsessed with movies and scarfing down plenty of popcorn to go along with it. That's why her projects often feel like a novel. Joy first learned about story structure from books alone and then applied that experience to her budding movie obsession. Honestly, I'm kind of wondering now what the novel version of Reminiscence would have been like.
Hell, you've got it made, writing for the pictures? And me being patronizing?
The action sequences in Reminiscence were few, but they were pretty freaking awesome. In particular, it was great how they had Thandiwe Newton's Watts shoot like she was a character from a John Wick movie. Honestly, she should be a character from a John Wick movie. The sequences were so impressive because they were coordinated by the same guy who does many of the stunts from Westworld, Buster Reeves. For Lisa Joy's next film, I'm really hoping that there's 150% more action sequences with Reeves at the helm. I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. If the music in Reminiscence was familiar, that's because it was created by one of the greatest working composers today. That would be, of course, Westworld's Ramin Djawadi. He's kind of a rock star. Game of Thrones, Pacific Rim, Person of Interest, Iron Man, these are some of his best projects so far. Coming up for him are huge composing opportunities like Eternals and the Game of Thrones spin-off House of the Dragon. Well, looks like I've got some pre-order queues to get on for those vinyls. As you can clearly see, Reminiscence was 90% film and 10% Westworld reunion party. That was especially clear when Clementine herself, Angela Sarafian, appeared in a scene with her regular co-star Thandiwe Newton. The two became close as they filmed dozens of scenes together as Maeve and her employee/close friend Clementine. Apparently getting another chance to work together was a big deal for both actresses, so I wouldn't be surprised if the two find any excuse to work together in the future. I'm pretty sure many fans wouldn't mind if all of Joy's works in the future are nothing but big Westworld reunion parties. Just, be sure to slip the Screenrant team an invite, okay? Appreciate it. This movie was a big deal for Thandiwe Newton for many reasons. It was a chance to show off her skills for the big screen yet again, but this time with enough action pedigree to potentially pitch her own franchise one day. Not only that, but it was a chance to star alongside her daughter, Nico Parker, who also appeared briefly in the film. I imagine for the mother and daughter, getting to work on Reminiscence wasn't nearly as good as the memories they made working together for the first time. As the movie itself will tell you, those memories last a lifetime. While the film takes most of its inspiration from old-school detective stories and modern Christopher Nolan sci-fi films like Inception, the movie wears its mythological inspiration on its sleeve. It openly compares itself to the tragic tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. The parallels are obvious, but there's one part that shows that Nick wasn't quite a big Greek myth guy. He says that Orpheus made a deal with the devil.
What was that name again?
But Hades isn't really the devil in Greek myth. I mean, sure, he's the boss of the underworld, but that hardly makes him the master of all evil. Maybe Nick was just a big fan of Disney's Hercules, where Hades is basically the devil? I mean, who isn't? That movie is amazing.
And hey, 2 thumbs way up for our leading lady.
We're gonna have to wait a little while before we see Lisa Joy's next film. That's because she's hard at work on the series that made Reminiscence work in the first place. Westworld Season 4 is on its way and will likely drop at some point in 2022. Rumor has it that the next chapter will be the most intense yet, and that Evan Rachel Wood will be returning after all. The last season had some excellent action and intrigue to it, so if the next season is even better, I'm pretty sure fans are gonna be pretty stoked. Anyway, my biggest problem with Reminiscence, now that everything is said and done, not a single person wanted to revisit their memories of playing the Nintendo 64 for the first time. I mean, technically everyone in the film was a grown-up millennial, and you're telling me no one wanted to relive GoldenEye. Really?